Guitar Business Radio is the podcast for the business of guitar, where you'll always get no reviews, no demos, and no idle chatter. From players to CEOs and in between. If you have a professional or business connection to the world of guitar, this show is your window to insight and information you won't get anywhere else. I'm Jeffrey D. Brown, and I approve this message. So let's get to it. From Guitar Business Media, welcome to episode 33 of GBR, where we talk seriously about the business of guitar, yet somehow we manage to have a lot of fun doing it. But we do respect your time, and listening to a show like this does take some time. So we do our best to produce a tightly edited show that moves right along, and that's the reason there's no idle chatter. And like we've said many times, you can get plenty of that elsewhere. And in keeping with that idea, we have a great special guest on the show today. Crystal Morris is the CEO of Gator Cases, one of the leading case designers and manufacturers in the music, pro audio, video, and other markets. Their product line now consists of over 1,000 different products and solutions as the company has grown both through innovation as well as strategic acquisitions. And since starting the company with her dad at the turn of the century, we all remember that, right? Gator Cases has risen from a company run out of a spare bedroom to one with facilities now measuring in the hundreds of thousands of square feet. It's a great story, and Crystal will join us in just a few moments, so stick around for that. So, our interview last week with Michael Melenda, the former editor of Guitar Player magazine, who in his own words was made redundant earlier this year, well, it was very well received and played all over the world and still is. And the feedback from Mike was very positive on many platforms, so I'm thoroughly thrilled about that. But there was one interesting comment that I saw which seemed kind of odd to me. At first, I thought the guy who wrote it was being critical of me, which is fine. I don't take any of it personally. Although I have to admit, I don't really get much, if any, hate mail. In fact, I've actually gotten no hate in the mail. None whatsoever. But why should I? I'm not taking any political positions one way or another. And I think that's where all the hate is consolidated these days. Not much spilling over here. But anyway, in this comment, the guy was saying about Mike's interview that the guy who runs the podcast, I assume that's me, is an avid self-promoter. And I had to turn it off before I could get to the interview. Well, fortunately, someone replied and informed the guy that there are timings in the show notes and that you can skip over the intro. I don't think there was any response to that. But I kind of chuckled a bit after thinking about it. I can't remember ever being called an avid self-promoter before. Doesn't mean it hasn't happened. I just can't remember that, along with a few other things. And the more I thought about it, the more I actually began to take it as kind of a compliment, even though I don't think the guy meant it that way, but I don't know. Now think about it. If I'm not promoting what we're doing and leading the charge on that, well, just exactly who is? But let me be perfectly clear about this. What little time I spend promoting this or any of our other projects on this show, I would gladly relinquish that time to someone else who would like to promote their products or company or whatever in that slot. Seriously, I'll do this for mutually beneficial consideration, of course. One final thing I want to point out. The first segment of the show, called Setting the Stage, where the so-called promotional activity resides, always begins at 40 seconds into the show, after I've very routinely and with the same recorded clip every week introduced myself as the host of the show. And in last week's episode, Setting the Stage, ended at 3 minutes and 40 seconds into the show, after which the interview segment began. So that's a net of 3 minutes. Man, it must have been an agonizing 3 minutes. Well, remember what I said at the beginning of the show. We respect your time. We'll always give you the timings so you can listen only to the parts you want to listen to. That won't stop us, however, from doing all we can to make all of the show interesting for as many listeners as possible. Now, while you think about why I said all of this, let's just move on to something completely different. So Crystal Morris has been with Gator Cases since the beginning. In fact, she founded the company with her dad in 2000. And in the 18 years since, has built the company into a powerhouse in the case business. She's a very busy CEO and an industry participant in many ways. Earlier this year, she completed the purchase of Levy's, the very well-known strap company, what really appears to be a synergistic move for sure. And there's much more to talk about, So let's get to it as Crystal Morris joins us right here and right now. Hey, Crystal, welcome to GBR, and thanks for taking the time, frankly, on a Saturday morning to come on the show and be with us today.
Absolutely. I'm excited to be here.
Great. That's always a good start. And speaking of starting, let's keep with tradition here and get right into some foundational stuff and find out some of the things in your earlier years, as you would define them, that might have had a significant and lasting effect or impact on your career and your business later in life. Most of us have one or two of those.
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say kind of twofold, but first of all, I played competitive tennis growing up. And I think playing a sport competitively is just such a great place to learn a lot of lessons that carry over into business. First of all, it takes a lot of hard work. You have to practice, you have to work hard. And I think you also you learn a little bit about failure and accepting failure, but that just means you get out there and practice harder and work harder. And then you get to experience those wonderful times of winning and success. And then, depending on what sport, I guess, there's just a whole element of teamwork too that really, I think, carries over into your work life later. So I really credit that with kind of teaching me to be able to take some licks occasionally and get back out there and try again and try harder. And so I think that would probably be the first thing.
Yeah, that's very logical. And we see that all the time in business. Lots of sort of sports connections and team building things and stuff like that. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And then the second thing is I just had my father was just such a great entrepreneur and kind of just always seeking adventure too. And so I just lived a really, as a role model, he just taught me so many great things about taking risk, about getting out there, building relationships. And, he was in the music industry, so got early exposure to things like going to the NAMM show and what the music industry is all about. And then just on this other side of kind of seizing life and having adventures and kind of putting yourself out there. And I could just think of all these wonderful things we did. I have this funny story that I always tell people that they laugh of my dad teaching me to water ski. And he was convinced that I should be able to slalom when I was 6. Oh. And so I don't know how many times I face planted. It might have been 100. Oh, bad. But eventually I got up. And but those things are things that kind of make you stronger and make you believe in yourself. And then I guess just, always just seizing the day and seizing what's out there.
You mentioned your dad was in the music side of things. What kind of activity was he involved in?
Yeah, so I guess in the 60s, he started in kind of the recording side, selling recording equipment. And then 70s and 80s had a company that sold all sorts of musical instrument equipment, everything from Akai to Jackson guitars, Charvel guitars. So it was a fun time, I guess, in the early 80s being involved with the Kai and kind of the sampling time. So we had all sorts of interesting people in our home and at the office. So that was fun to be a part of.
So that was a good base, and that explains some things that we'll talk about in a few minutes about Gator Cases. But before I dive into that, because that's a big part of what we're going to talk about, I just wanted to ask you a little bit about the time prior to the launch of the company and what you were doing professionally. I don't know anything about that or if there's anything to know. But we always kind of try to fill in the gaps a little bit. Were you, prior to getting involved and launching the company, were you doing something different?
Well, so I went to college and got my business degree, a marketing degree. And then when I graduated, my dad had this idea that he thought I needed a real world MBA. So he kind of helped me get some really interesting different jobs for a period of time. It involved, I actually was down in Argentina and worked in a distributor there. I worked in a freight forwarder in Miami and did another kind of marketing job that was in Miami. And then ultimately I ended up in the marketing department of another case company. So that was kind of how I gained experience in the case business.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. So tell us about the lead up. Were you working for this other case company just prior to the launch, or in the previous period of time prior to launching Gator Cases?
Yeah, so I'd been, doing the marketing for them, and met my husband, who was living in Tampa. At the time, I lived in Miami, and decided I wanted to go back and get my MBA. So moved to Tampa, and was gone back to school. And then literally, my dad actually my parents lived in South Florida, and around a kitchen table, right? I mean, literally within a couple of weeks of getting married, we dreamed up the idea of starting Gator. And so it was truly a kind of a family launch. I think my mom to this day claims that she came up with the name Gator. We were on a mission for something that was like we could use as to show that we made something that was strong. So we went through a bunch of names and settled on Gator.
And there are some other companies emanating out of Florida that have that name. In fact, the hosting company that we lease our servers from is from down there, and have Gator in their names. So
it's pretty common.
Yeah. Well, most of us know that you and your dad started this company, and it sounds to me like it's kind of around the turn of the century, if I have that right.
So in 2000. Yeah. I know, it's crazy to say that, isn't it?
Yeah. So I'd like to hear, a little bit more detail on what that was like, at a personal level, and then and certainly as kind of a base question, not in the instrumental sense, but, what really made you think that you were going to be able to make a go of it in this business, and kind of what was the vision there? So it's a complex, multi-part question. So parse it any way you want.
Okay, let me take a shot and then you jump in. So like I mentioned, I was, in business school, and I had this idea, or I'd studied this idea that we could start a business on a variable cost model. So basically we had no expenses except for ones that were like directly driven from sales. So we outsourced our warehousing, we outsourced the marketing, so we kind of basically outsourced everything that we could, and went to town at it. And really at the time, there weren't a lot of competitors. And especially what kind of ended up to be is there weren't a lot of competitors that did a lot of different types of cases and bags. So there was someone maybe that was really good in a certain type of plastic, someone else that was good in a sewn bag, someone else that did wood cases. So we really saw that as an opportunity. And the other thing was that on the plastic side, there wasn't anyone doing it really well offshore. And so we really were the first to go offshore and figure out how to make a good product. And of course, that let us come into the market at a very strong price advantage. I
would imagine so. And so you really started off with, it was all imported product at that time, or?
It was, yeah. So, I mean, we went to the Summer NAMM show in 2000 in Nashville, and we had 5 guitar cases that were plastic cases. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't probably very particularly thrilling.
And you had a booth?
We had a booth. Okay. We had a booth. Our kind of claim to fame was we were proud of the fact that we had made the valances and everything black, so it looked like a nicer product. Yeah. And we were obviously at a lower price. Very, I don't know, maybe 60% of the cost of the competition. So wow. I think that was a pretty compelling offering. And we had no overhead. So I cannot say that that's the case now, but at the time, our overhead was very low. I literally was doing all of the business out of my guest bedroom at my new house, and then my father was doing the sales and kind of product development. So we were able, I think, really to capture the market pretty quickly. Based on price and the fact that he had, a lot of great long-term relationships in the industry.
So that really made a difference. All that previous connection making that was going on there really helped. So it was, absolutely, you kind of walk into the market. What was you were at NAMM show, and that was kind of like your launch time, roughly speaking. What was the market reaction to what you were doing? Sounds like it was positive, but how? I mean,
I think, it was positive, but it was, we only had 5 cases. So I think, kind of everyone's response was, yeah, we can see it, but, you need more products. So we went, quickly to work at expanding our product offering. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of those situations that there's times where there's early adopters, and there were some people that did that. The other thing that we did that was a little different is at that time, all of our main competitors were selling through distributors, and we went direct to the dealer. So by going direct to the dealer, not only do we cut out a layer of margin, but it let us create those relationships with the actual B2B customer.
Yeah. So yeah, I can imagine. When you say you had 5 cases, what were those 5 cases? What were they used for?
They were guitar cases. I think we had a bass, electric, a dread, and then I think we did those in like a couple different, like with and without, like black valences, and that was it.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, but by even like Winter NAMM 6 months later, I think we had already built out like a line of rack cases. So we had I think 2 through 12 space racks, and then really what we found was the opportunity to really expand and do all these different types of construction, so that it wasn't about what we wanted to make a product that was the best for whatever someone was using it for. So sometimes you want a bag, sometimes you want something out of plastic, maybe sometimes you want something out of wood. And so we really kind of took this approach of becoming case experts and not fitting it into the type of manufacturing we had, but we continued just to evolve and figure out how to make it out of new materials.
Well, let's progress a little further, and as you were building the company, let's go through some of the milestones and also some of the significant challenges that you ran into, if any, and I'm sure there are 1 or 2, and what you did to overcome them. I think there's probably a lot there.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think maybe one of the things that was interesting was around 2007, 2008. It was, obviously there's a lot of things going on in the economy.
That's for sure.
A couple of things. Yeah. So U.S. economy was really difficult. And also at that same time, as I mentioned, we had originally started our business model on sourcing out of Asia. The prices were just on this huge increase out of Asia, and our price competitiveness was, eroding. And hindsight, you can look back and know what happens, but at the time it's like, when is this going to end? So we really felt the need to diversify our supply base and decided to get into some U.S. manufacturing. So the process that we determined that we thought would be a good fit was something called rotational molding. Mm-hmm. And it makes kind of big plastic parts. And so I just went to town, like trying to find how to do that. And I actually went and met with the machine makers that make the machine to do rotomolding. And after I saw it, I was like, oh, I think we better buy a business, because there's some recipe and magic here. And so, I mean, it was kind of odd fate, but I got on one of those websites, it's like, buybiz.com or something, where historically I've never found anything ever again. And I type in rotomolding and this company pops up, and I was just trying to find someone who had a rotomold. I didn't care what they were molding. And it happens to be out of Fort Wayne, Indiana, a company called Gator Cases, and they made percussion cases. And so I went and met with them, and we ended up purchasing that company. And that was, it was a significant milestone for us. Bringing onshoring manufacturing, learning about manufacturing, and then honestly, just acquiring a company there's a lot to learn there too.
Yeah,
so,
I would say it was a big curve. And how long did that process take?
And then the gentleman that we bought the company from, who was a really neat man, unfortunately got cancer and passed away, and kind of a little bit shortly after we purchased the company. And so that was, it kind of we went from having someone who had the expertise to us kind of, being thrown in our lap a little bit. But I'd say the acquisition process took maybe 6 months, and then it took a couple of years for us to honestly get good at it. Ultimately, when we bought the company, they had one machine, and if you can picture, I mean, these are giant, I'm trying to think what you would even very large machines. And now we have 3 of them, and actually we're about to buy another one. So we've been able to really grow that business, but it definitely, there was just definitely a lot of learning along the way. And I just kind of personally just jumped in. I went to a bunch of conferences on manufacturing, on this particular process, because, you don't realize what you don't know until you get started sometimes.
That's right.
So.
That's absolutely right. So what was, tell me a little bit more about the process and what you use that to make. And this is a facility that's not located in Florida, right?
No. So now our facility that does the rotomolding, we actually, I guess that's about 4 years ago, 3.5 years ago, we moved to about 225,000 square feet, still in Fort Wayne, that houses both the manufacturing we're doing and all of our warehousing.
Wow, pretty good sized building. 225.
Yeah, it's a very big building. I looked it up once and it was like, I don't remember. It was a couple hundred school buses that could fit in it. It's a big building. So that is where it is today. Mm-hmm. And then what we did is we put our all of our warehousing there too, and we found some great synergies where we've can combine what we're making in the U.S. with things we import to make a really unique value proposition for our customers.
Got it.
So what we're making mostly is all sorts of kind of large cases. And we actually have a lot of really great OEM customers in there too. But we make rack cases, like traditional pro audio rack cases. We make cases that hold flat screen TVs.
Really?
We make cases that are for amps. We actually make some pedal boards out of this process. Trying to think what else. And obviously all the percussion cases. And then we have lots of OEM customers that we're making everything from holding like projectors and screens, actually chain hoist cases. So there's kind of all sorts of things we make there.
So it's a pretty diverse facility, and then you're
it is, a lot of different things. Yeah. And actually, it's funny. I mean, we do some just like basically manufacturing work there. We actually have a customer that we make the bucket liners that go inside of cherry pickers.
Oh, wow.
So there's kind of some odd little jobs we do in addition to cases, but really we have it to make, cases. So
is just a trivial question. What percentage of your business is related to the music world?
Ooh. And do you consider audio video?
Absolutely. Sure.
Okay. Yeah. Then I'd say 85%.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. So we were doing a lot more stuff on the video side. And audio side, so not traditional, maybe guitar, keyboard instruments. Some of that other space is growing pretty rapidly, but it's all kind of related, right?
Sure,
so,
of course.
So I guess the other part of this question you asked, and I think maybe just kind of touching on a personal side, is significant challenges. So for the first, 8 years of Gator. My dad and I, worked together. We shared an office, and we really kind of had two different expertise. And he was amazing at the fact that I think a lot of times when, multi-generational, he really let me just try things out, kind of let me fail and figure out how to fix it, and gave me some space to learn. But I really did kind of all of the ops side of the business. I did everything from the accounting, initially when we started, I set up the GL structure to all the marketing. So kind of all the back, behind the scenes stuff. And he was more forward facing, working with the customers and working with the factories. And we kind of had this split of duties. And at the time I had young children, so it worked, I think better for me to be more home based, be in Tampa. But I walked into his office one day and I started talking to him, and I realized his whole side of his face is drooping, and I knew something had happened. And so anyways, it ends up they actually ended up having an autoimmune disease, but that was causing this. But it was a huge wake up call for me in terms of the fact that gosh, if something happened to him right now, today, am I prepared to run this business? And would I have everybody behind me, right? Would I have our customers behind me? Would I have our employees behind me? Would I have our suppliers behind me? They needed to have faith in my abilities. So it was a time of some soul searching of what I wanted to do. And then I don't know, I'm a list maker. So I sat down one day and I just made this list. I was like, okay, well, where are my gaps? And then, how can I solve those gaps? So I really felt like I wasn't forward facing with the customers. I needed to really build those relationships with our key customers, need to build the relationships with the suppliers, and, of course, just continue to build my leadership skills. And And so I just started working on that. And so like one of the things I put down was I wanted to get on the NAMM board. So I went on a mission to get on the NAMM board.
Wow.
And I just
did that work out?
It did work out. It did. You just gotta. I did. Yeah, it did work out, and it was a great experience. And I just started getting out there. And then I knew, like, at the time, I mean, it's kind of a young female. It's a very male dominated industry. Mm-hmm. I needed to show up and be able to bring value. So I really tried to figure out when I went and met with these customers that I didn't want to just show up and say hi and let's go to dinner. I wanted to show up and really show that I could bring value and partnership and how we could, build our businesses together. So, and then, you can't just show up once. So I don't think that gets it done either. Yeah. So I just, I went to work on that. And luckily from that point there, we had many, I don't know, about 4 or 5 years where my dad kind of went up and down with, getting healthier and then having some issues. But he was always a phone call away. So even though he wasn't as involved in the daily business, he was always my support network. So about 3.5, well, I guess almost 4 years now, he did end up passing away. And that was kind of like, a little bit of game day as far as, if it was, if I had everything under control and I've been, honestly very fortunate. It took time to know that everything has worked out, really well. And we've had a great last couple of years. Obviously he's missed and I wish he was here to see all the great things we're doing, but
yeah, I understand that. Did you feel like you were able to hit the ground running at that point, even though it's a terrible loss and certainly a personal moment that's difficult? How did that impact your daily work? Were you able to just continue on, or did you have a period of time where, not to be too personal, but... No. And I'm happy to talk about it because I think that this is something that affects a lot of family businesses. And, if there's a way that can help other people. I had really kind of played it out in my mind a lot ahead of time. So I think on the business side, I hit the ground running. And I just, I guess... maybe, I don't know if this, I think I definitely have this like fear of failure. So it's like, I don't want to fail. I want to, hit the ground running and do a great job. I don't know if I like ever properly mourned because I like didn't even allow myself that time. Yeah. But I do think by spending time ahead of time, really, really processing and realizing that this was an inevitable situation and I needed to be ready mentally, when it happened, it was like, wow, this is it, but Did you ever stop and wonder? I mean, it's all hypothetical and doesn't mean anything in the real world. But if you had not had that time to really get it together, if something had happened very quickly, have you ever thought about how you would have responded, how that would have all played out? Do you think it would have just played out the same way? No, I don't. Honestly, I think I was really lucky to have that time. And I think, I guess things work out in different ways. And I think I was really lucky to have that time and I guess to, kind of face it at that time and spend a couple of years really getting dialed in the areas that I thought I needed to expand my skills. Yeah. Well, it's a good story and I'm sure that our listeners will get a lot out of that. But let's just, I want to ask you about something. We can chime back in on a couple of other things, but there's been a lot of talk, especially lately, about these tariffs. So every once in a while we get into current events here, which I think is fine. This is and we've had some discussions with some other folks here and there. So why don't you give us a sense of what's happening at your end and what you're seeing in general, what your concerns might be? Yeah, I mean, honestly, when talking about significant challenges, I mean, this is a big one. This tariff war that's going on, and all of a sudden, in the products that I'm making, it affects at this exact moment. What just came out was a 10% basically across the board increase, but it's going to go to 25% January 1 unless they work something out. And I know. Lots of people in our industry have already been affected by the 25%. And it's, it's really difficult because I think that one of the wonderful things about the music and audio industry is we're kind of all in it together. Like, I feel like for the most part, everyone's trying to have success,
as partners. And then here we are with like, do we make the product more expensive for the customer who maybe now we're pricing it outside of their market? Do we make the retailer make less money? Do we make less money?
Or some combination of all those things.
Yeah, or some combination of all those things. So, and then what happens ultimately to our economy is all these consumer durables are going up in price unless wages really follow that. I think people are just going to be buying less stuff. So I don't know. It's challenging, and it's challenging to figure out how to do the right thing. For everybody involved in the entire channel.
So I guess there's some hope that maybe all this finagling and wrangling may resolve at some point. I think a lot of people are thinking, this can't really happen for a long period of time. But who knows? Sometimes these things do, and people just get entrenched and dig in and doesn't go anywhere. It seems to be accelerating right now. Do you have any hope that there'll be some resolution?
I don't know. I mean, I guess I don't think anybody really knows. Everyone's just, kind of hypothesizing about it. But I do think that what's happening, and some people that maybe aren't even as credible, or they're just pushing these price increases to the market. And then even if it gets clawed back, do you think people are really going to claw back the price increase? Probably not. So,
that's an interesting way to look at it. It could be that some people are absolutely looking at it from that way strategically. I say, well, this is an opportunity for us to raise our prices, and then let's just hope that those things go back down and we've got a bigger margin.
Exactly. No, I've heard of some instances, like I do a bunch of different business groups, which is something I'm a huge advocate on is continuing education and networking. But I've been on a couple different calls with those groups, and I'm hearing of like where they're talking to me about suppliers that are just pushing these price increases, and then their products aren't even being affected. So they, people don't know what's being affected, so they're using it. It is a ruse. So no, I had someone that was in this business group, and they told me what this product was. I was like, I can't believe that's being affected. And I kind of got on a mission when I looked it up to prove to them. I'm like, they're taking advantage of you. You need to go back to them.
I'm surprised somebody hasn't come up with one of these cause-like websites that sort of keeps track of that stuff. Somebody may do that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
It won't be me, but
yeah, or me. I don't have time to mess with it. Nor do I even want. I don't even want to think about it any more than I have to. But yeah, I mean, I've been mentally preparing, my team, saying, hey, we need to get ready if this happens. But of course, we were all crossing our fingers that it wouldn't, and now it has come to pass. So now we're going to deal with it.
Well, it sounds like everything else. The challenges come and the challenges go because we figure out ultimately how to deal with it. And it kind of leads me into my next topic, which is to talk a little bit about your company culture and how that impacts your operation and growth of your business. And I'm sure you have something to say about that.
Yeah, it's funny. Someone told me this quote a while back, and I love it. Culture kills strategy any day.
Yeah, could you elaborate on that a little bit? What does that mean? Yeah.
So, you can sit around and break all these wonderful strategies of how you're going to grow your business, but if you don't have great culture and people behind it, they're not going to work.
Yeah.
So, I think probably like my number one job is trying to get everybody rowing in the right direction together. And and getting them motivated and figuring out how to help and kind of just be that team manager. And to me, when we bring new people on, a huge aspect of it, of who we hire, has to do with if they're going to be a good cultural fit. And we just work really hard on making it a great place to work. And that, I'm not going to say that it's not high stress, because we are, very goal oriented, but we're also working together as a team. We understand sometimes things don't work out, and we figure out another way to attack it. And I don't know, I try to make it fun. Like, we have a ping pong table that we're always, having ping pong tournaments, and we go out and do different company events. And something else I read recently is like, there was a survey of like the number one reason people stay at a job or with a company is the friends that they have there. So I think, helping to develop those friendships, and we have a bunch of people playing bands together, and
that's cool.
It's pretty cool. So one of the things that's kind of interesting now is earlier this year, we bought Levy's that makes guitar straps.
Right.
So we are getting like really spread out. So in Tampa, I have about 40 people. In Indiana, Fort Wayne, Indiana, we have about 60 people. In Canada, we have about 60 people. And so trying to figure out culture across not only, I guess, state, but also over country, is a new challenge for us. And so, we're definitely working on how to do that.
So is it headcount wise, you're what, 150 to 200 for the entire company or something like that?
Yeah, I think we're around 185.
Wow. That's bigger than 50. That puts you in a whole different league of regulation and all kinds of other stuff.
Yeah. And actually, it's been such a great, I love all these different ways you get to learn. And you think Canada, is almost sometimes, I think us naively sitting in the U.S. think of it as so similar to the U.S. and it's not. They have their own culture, and so that's been a really interesting challenge for us to make sure that we're really respecting that and figure out how to build on it.
So tell me about what's going on in Canada. I know you've made some trips up there lately, but I probably read about this at some point. But you have a facility up there, or what?
Yes. So when we bought Levy's, they have absolutely beautiful manufacturing facility in Nova Scotia. So it's a little bit of a voyage to get there.
Okay.
So I've been up there supporting that team. And then also I've gone on the road a little bit and traveled to see some dealers up there with our sales team.
Well, that's perfect. You're really getting this segue business down for me really well. So I appreciate that. I want to talk about acquisition. Obviously, that's been a big one lately. So, tell me a little bit about that, and if there's a bigger strategy there for the company down the road.
Yeah, I obviously we are looking to grow, but we want to do it smartly and with the right product and right partners. So when I learned about the opportunity with Levy's, and I've always been familiar with that brand. And
sure.
To me,
Most
when I think of guitar, you think of a guitar strap, it's kind of like the Kleenex, right? I mean, there's tons of guitar straps out there, but if you could think of one name, I think that would be the one you would probably.
I gotta put on my Levy.
Yeah, perfect.
I'm not sure I would say that, but I know what you mean.
Yeah, so I don't know. So and the product was beautiful and something that I'd be really proud to sell and bring to our customers. So I think the right opportunities, I love the idea of doing more acquisitions. But the flip side is there a lot of work and to do them right. And we're still working on all the integration right now with Levy's. So
tell me a little bit about that. Now, you completed that deal, was it earlier this year or?
Yeah. So we completed it in January. Mm-hmm. And it honestly took us a couple of months to just kind of understand all the pieces of the puzzle to figure out what we wanted to do next. The initial big mission for us was that they were shipping to all their U.S. customers out of, small orders out of Canada.
Yeah, that's tough.
So it was tough. So in May, it took us, till May, really into May, to get an entire inventory set up in our facility in Fort Wayne. So kind of our first mission was to be able to ship the Levy's product to our U.S. customers. From
your U.S. facility. I know some other Canadian companies that have had to do that too, that have had to put U.S. hubs in place. So in terms of the integration, I mean, has that been culture-wise? Is that taken a lot of work? And by the way, was there any competition to buy the company? I mean, I've been involved in a few of these things over the years, but some of them have been more competitive than others. But was that a fairly easy process, or?
There was competition. They had two other suitors. I think though that the Dennis and Harvey, the prior owners, really wanted it to make sure that it was someone who was going to be a steward of the brand.
Makes sense.
And I think that really played into it. So, and I have such firm beliefs in that, and of the fact that I really want to support the Levy's brand. I have no desire to turn it into a Gator product. It's about Levy's.
Sure, there's a lot of equity there in that brand.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so, I mean, I just, I want in 10 years from now for them to be able to look and be really proud of what we've done with the company. And so that's the mission. And so I think that really weighed into who they decided to go with in terms of their different suitors was, they wanted it to be someone who was going to love the brand and be able to give it its due.
Interesting stuff. Are you looking at any other companies now, or are you going to give it a rest?
I'm not. I am giving it a rest.
Yeah.
I need some rest. I think I've traveled every week for except for 1 month this summer that I took 4 weeks in a row. Pretty much it's nonstop trying to keep all the balls in the air. So
we'll keep an eye on that.
But if the right thing's out there, obviously I'd entertain it. But
sure.
I'm definitely
well, you don't want to get too overextended. We've seen examples of that in the news.
Yes. Yes.
So I know that you recently became a board member of Reverb.com. And we had the pleasure of interviewing David Kalt a couple of months ago, or whenever it is, and great interview. And I suspect that you have some other extracurricular activities as well. And as an executive, how do these activities fit in with both your business interests and your personal life? How's that for you?
Yeah. Okay. So very excited about the Reverb opportunity. When they came on the scene a couple of years ago, I honestly went on a mission to meet David Kalt. I was asking everyone I knew who knew him and found someone who knew him and was like, okay, you've got to get me an introduction, because I really felt like they were changing the landscape. Still do. I think they're,
absolutely.
And so I wanted to be a part of it. I am involved in a lot of different things. I do a great business group called YPO. It's Young Presidents Organization. I do different things here in the local, in our Tampa, local area with the CEO Council. I'm actually doing stuff with the local university. And then I'm also really involved in trying to build my skills. So I'm always doing different types of continuing education. I'm actually currently right now completing a year-long course that's been 5 weeks on campus. So it has been a little drag, and I think my family has not been that happy at Yale for a global leadership degree. And I think if I sit in my office and just kind of pound the sand of the same things I've always done, we're not gonna grow, and I'm not gonna learn and be a better leader. So as much as it does seem like in one way it could be dragging you down or a distraction, I think that all these things you're learning and then you're bringing it back to your company and helping apply it. So, and I'm doing a really cool thing with NAM right now that I'd love to talk about. That
sure,
it's called Swim, and so Robin Walenta and Dee Dee Hyde and I got together and we've started this. We started Swim, which is about actually helping to educate and bring more women into the music industry.
Is it an acronym?
It is. It's SMART. Oh my gosh, I can't. Smart Women in Business or Smart Women in Music. Yes, you got me. They're going to kill me for messing it up too. So, but I think it's. I personally, there's not a lot of women in particular at executive levels in the music product industry side.
Yeah,
and so we're on a mission to help build that from the ground up, like helping to get education, get more people into the industry. We've done some fundraising, and we're really going to be launching some cool programs over the next year to support that effort.
Amazing. Question just kind of came to my mind as we're talking about this. As you're getting more involved in some of these outside things, which are part of your own growth, your company is continuing to grow and operate. I would imagine that a big part of your responsibility as a corporate leader is to not only delegate, but to delegate to really good people so that you're able to do those sorts of things with minimal amounts of stress. How's that worked out?
Yeah, that's a great question. You're absolutely right. It is all about the people. And when we've had opportunities as we've been growing and identifying opportunities to bring in, strong people, I love bringing in people that have experiences that on day one, I'm learning from them. We have an amazing CFO. That he's literally like 1 hour in, I'm sitting at his desk and I'm like writing notes. So he's been a huge help in being able to be out and do some of these things. Our Indiana facility is run by another gentleman who is amazing, and came once again from like a larger organization. So they just brought all this knowledge into our business. So, as we've been growing, I've had the opportunity to be able to bring in some really strong people, and I really seek it out. I think trying to take the cheap route or not try to find the most talented people is a mistake. And then the other thing is I have some people, we have some people at Gator that have been with us since almost the beginning who just keep growing and finding ways to learn and develop themselves. And that's awesome too.
Well, so much of that culture comes from the top down, and and you're pushing a lot of decision making downward, which is a good thing. So I think that's a testament to your leadership.
I hope so. Yeah. I try to I want everyone to be entrepreneurs, so it's like,
that's a great strategy.
I kind of feel like I have the platform. You guys go be entrepreneurs, and I try to create a culture where it's okay to fail. Try to fail fast and as inexpensively as possible, hopefully. But yeah, I think it's, really about building up the people and giving them opportunities.
So early on the show, I've done a lot of commentary and a lot of just yapping at the back of the show. And I think in one of the early episodes, or more than once, I confessed that I had eliminated the word failure from my vocabulary and just classified all that stuff, everything that I used to think of as failure, into a better category called R&D. So
I thought you were going to say it was a learning experience.
Well, it was probably that too, but R&D is all about learning, right?
Yep, it is. It is. I like that.
So maybe you can take that with you. So, okay, I like to, as most people know, I like to close out our interviews with some perspective, and it's obviously different for everybody. Gator Cases has been on a growth trajectory, easy for me to say. And so I'm interested to know how you see the future in terms of both challenges and opportunities for the industry in general, as well as your business.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm always excited about the industry because it just has a lot of people that are passionate. And when you have passion, great things can happen. There are challenges. I think that the big are getting bigger, and the local stores are becoming less and less. And I think that's where people go to see gear, to fall in love with it. So I think that's a little concerning. And there's just some trend changes in, what people are interested in. The flip side is that companies like Fender are getting extremely invested in creating music makers of the future through the NAMM organization. Lots of great advocacy work. I've gone for years up to Capitol Hill to advocate for music education, which is making sure at the young ages that there's access to it. So there's a lot of things also that are bringing in new people and really focused on that. But I do think it's a changing world, and everybody's, we go to restaurants, we see every kid's on their cell phone. It's, the free time to be as involved in music isn't as much as it used to be. So I do think that's a challenge, but also something I think we're tackling. In terms of Gator, the opportunities are kind of endless. It's just which ones do you capture, and and how do you not burn out your people by trying to do too much. So I think that we have an amazing team of designers that I think anything in a case and bag, whatever it is, we can really do a beautiful job on. So there's other industries, there's outdoor and sporting and other places for us to continue to grow. And then, on the music side, finding great ways to expand our product offering that makes sense and are nice, neighboring products to what we're doing, like the Levy's guitar straps, is another great way for us to grow. And as we have these great relationships with our retailers, and we can be like kind of a one-stop shop for them to be able to get all their accessories and different needs.
Yeah, so the fact that you have this multi-industry capability is probably a real advantage for your company, unlike other companies who might be somewhat limited by the fact that they're involved in one industry, that an industry itself might be affected by something negative, and as a result affect them. So you've got a little bit of a buffer built in, in case something
exactly.
happens someplace else. A quick related question I just thought of is, with levies and Gator, are you, I haven't had a chance to really look in depth, but is there some cross promotion that goes on now between those businesses? Are you taking advantage of bringing what exists in those markets separately and those customer bases to help cross promote both products?
Yeah, I mean, we are, and I think there's a lot more opportunity to do that. I mean, our first kind of way we're doing that is more focused at the B2B level of being able to, put it all on one order. That helps get free freight and things like that. Different specials that by putting them together, you can achieve different discounts or specials or whatever. So
that's big. That's really big. So they can do that now. You can actually buy straps and cases on the same order?
On the same order.
Wow.
On the same order, and it helps qualify for, different, whatever, free freight or different programs.
That's huge.
So
that's probably one of the most important cross-promotional integration things you could do.
Absolutely. So from that, that's like the consumer doesn't see that, but for our dealers, I think it's a huge win.
Of course.
And they obviously had dealers that we didn't have. We had a lot of dealers they didn't have. So that's obvious.
Sounds
a
like
huge pickup too.
a big win-win.
Yeah, it's been great.
And so since you're now in charge of all of it, you get the combined consolidated win. So that's a good thing too.
Yeah.
Awesome. This has been great. A great interview. Great to speak with you. Lots of really, really good information. And now I hope that we'll have a chance to do a sequel somewhere down the road and talk about all the new things that have happened. And maybe, who knows, there might be another acquisition or something like that. But it's been great having you on.
Well, thank you. I've really, really enjoyed it. And great questions. They made me think. So I loved it. Thank you.
Awesome. Welcome back to the back of the show. It's kind of like a post-game wrap-up without the sports. And nothing against sports. There's just no sports. But what we do like to talk about is what just happened. The interview. So let's get to that. So what did you think about it? Let us know on the official episode page on guitarbusinessradio.com or on Facebook or Twitter at Guitar Business. Or email us or call us on the GBR hotline at 888-777-2404. We love to hear from you. So this was another enlightening interview for me. I hope that's a good sign and that it was enlightening and informative and interesting for many of our listeners. Crystal is articulate and knowledgeable and all that, but beyond that, she was authentic and offered a lot about her personal experience, which you may not always get from a CEO. But that's always the goal here, to provide an environment where we can comfortably get into the weeds and the stories behind the stories. That's what it's all about. And her candid discussion about having to ultimately take the reins of the business after losing her dad and co-founder of the company was especially revealing in a very positive and healthy way, I thought. She was fortunate in that she had some time and the foresight to bring herself up to speed, recognizing that the time would likely come when she would have to carry on by herself. And carry on she has in a very impressive way. My sense is that Crystal has kept her eye on many destinations, knowing there was always a way to get there, or someplace better, one way or another. Another point that I thought was well stated and worth noting from the interview is that in business, not unlike in our personal lives as well, there are learning curves, often many. Acquiring another company and integrating it to any degree always involves a learning curve, as she demonstrated on several occasions. And how those kinds of things manifest can vary greatly depending on many factors. And if you think about it, some learning curves kind of go on indefinitely in many cases. I suppose we could offer differing opinions on what to call that, because you could say, I guess, that life is just one big learning curve, and with that maybe we've diluted the idea in the process, but the bigger point, in my view, is more often how receptive we are to learning in the first place. Learning invariably involves change, which frequently opens up a whole can of worms for a lot of people. And for me, that just circles back to something I've talked about often on this show, and that's expectations. I've mentioned the perils of the expectation game in the past and my desire to operate in the expectancy of the best possible result when we're dealing with variable outcomes, which is much of the time. Setting narrow expectations in these situations can often lead to less than desirable results. And remember one other thing. If you're always on the lookout for negative results, you shouldn't have any trouble finding them. So in closing, I would just once again remind you to stay positive, stay focused on the destination, and keep all your options open on how you're going to get there. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you again on episode 34. And that's it for this episode of Guitar Business Radio. Thanks for being with us. You can stay tuned and stay in touch at guitarbusinessradio.com.